Hello there, this is Cridical from Cridical Media. Just taking a look at the end of 2024 hardcover release of Dawnrunner by Ramvi, Evan Cagle, and Dave Stewart on the awesome colors as always. And what we usually do at this channel is give you an idea of what to expect if you ever come across these books in the wild. So we go over the exterior, some bonus material, art and plot points, and then a brief review at the end. Now, this story, it was on my radar last year, or at least in 2024. And what was always unique about it was that, in a nutshell, if you ever liked that film, Pacific Rim, giant monsters against giant robots, essentially, this is basically the same narrative, only just a far more evocative narrative. Go figure, it's Ram V. But anywho, I'll get into that, I guess, a little bit later with the art and plot points. But at least back to the nature of this channel. In terms of the exterior, it is a hardcover release, but it is a standard hardcover, so it is probably the only real criticism I have of the book. So maybe just to show you up against a normal deluxe, see what I mean? It's just a standard hardcover. Now, there is a special edition of this book, but it's not in English. It's actually in French. After all, even Evan Cagle is from France. But I've noticed that release, it's larger, and it has different colors. So maybe that's like the catch-22 of it all. If you want a larger format, there is one. It's just that it doesn't have Dave Stewart's colors in it. But hey, maybe in the near future, they might release a premium format. Who knows? But in any case, just still walking around the exterior. You kind of see that the tone of the book retains its quality. So yeah, it just has the cover of the actual machine there and the main character. Then it has, of course, the spine design. And, your typical fare on the rear, nothing really to write home about. But being a Dark Horse release, at least it is a hardback, no dust jacket. So I always appreciate Image and Dark Horse for doing that often. In terms of bonus material, you are getting your typical fare with cover art designs, or should I say variant covers. And it's intriguing because even in previous Ram V books, Evan Cagle often did variant covers for him. And I always wondered whenever were they going to work on a book together. So this is actually the real narrative that they work together on, the real project that they get to both shine on. But nonetheless, you're just seeing some pretty decent cover designs here. I have to admit, this Gax one was probably one of my favorites. Felipe Andrade from another set of Ram V books. Also got a chance to work out there. And just your prominent characters. The protagonist, Anita Marr. The pseudo bad guy and Andros Lester, and basically just the CEO of the corporation. And I guess you get to see like Morali and whatnot. And maybe just an example of one of the monsters in the book, the Tetsa, as they call them. But not too much else going on in terms of bonus material. But I do appreciate these bookends because it's also repeated at the beginning as well. So definitely something to appreciate. I like the overall aesthetic design of the book. I just wish it was a little bit bigger. That's my probably only real criticism you're going to hear here. But aside from that, and I guess into the art and plot points, as I kind of hinted earlier, if you're familiar with Pacific Rim, there's a lot that I can just connect the dots with. So it is this very familiar setting. Basically above Guatemala, a giant portal opens. They literally call it a tear or a descaron. And yes, these giant monsters come through. Humanity tries to fight them for about a century. They keep failing, so they end up designing these large mechs, which they call Iron Kings, to fight them. And it's gotten to a point now, like a few centuries have gone by. Yes, they're still dealing with this, but they've almost made a sport out of it because humanity can at least fend them off decently enough and make it entertaining. So it's kind of become a sport, and that's where we have our main character, our protagonist, in Anita Marr. She's the star pilot, and she's a celebrity in her own right for it. She has her own motivations, of course, but nonetheless, the whole crux of the story is that they've designed yet a new Iron King, one with a special kind of technology approach with it this time. And so one thing I definitely appreciate is that this story, as mentioned, it's basically Pacific Rim with a conscience. Meaning they talk more about like what's really going on or the motivations behind characters a lot more in depth. Because that's one thing I'll say about Pacific Rim. It was all about the idea of humans fighting monsters and big robots. And that was it. Giant mech armor, whatever. And that was all it was, a very surface level story. But that's what it was going for, and that's what it succeeded in. This basically adds another dimension to it all, where you actually care about these characters' motivations. You care about the rivalries. You care about the world that they exist in. So it's pretty impressive in that light. But yes, and you even get, yes, her, or even her motivations. Yes, she has a daughter who's infected by some sort of disease brought on by these giant monsters. So you see what I mean? There's greater motivations and greater purpose to things. But this is an excellent little page here because it gets to show off a lot of Evan Cagle's like overall aesthetic. And not to mention, I love the nod to the Iron Giant. Yes, that's fully intentional. I love that it's there. But as you kind of see, it's a bit of a heartbreaking thing because her daughter, you know, they make her an appealing character, but admittedly, like, she's just constantly in the hospital. She doesn't really get a chance to go out and enjoy life. Back to the actual narrative, though, and the whole reason of the book being eponymously called Dawnrunner. Yes, that is the name of the new mech that they designed. And what's unique about it is that it actually uses, as a way of supporting the pilot, it basically uses a dead human brain to kind of help with the computation. And through that, she kind of meets this previous person who's kind of stuck in limbo. Basically the brain of Ishiro Takeda, a man who went through some pretty heavy stuff centuries prior. And that's what I like about this narrative. It kind of juxtaposes between what's going on right now with, for instance, her fighting a monster right here and kind of getting dealt with, to, yes, at least the narrative with Ichiro trying to rescue his family from an inevitable fate. And that's one of my favorite turns of this book. But as you can kind of see, nonetheless, as you can kind of see here, you're getting awesome detailed kinetics here, like very visceral work. And one thing I definitely appreciate about Evan Cagle here, aside from being like an expressionist artist, he's basically like Dan Mora if Dan Mora had another dynamic layer to his art. Don't get me wrong, I like Dan Mora and all, but just reading this and seeing like Evan Cagle on full display here, it's hard not to make the connection that the art styles are similar, except Evan Cagle seems to be way more of an expressionist and gets way more life and dynamic poses out of characters. Hell, even this image here, like just the lighting of it and all, Dave Stewart's coloring to it, it's incredible. But yeah, you're definitely getting a visceral take on one of these battles here with one of the Tetsa monsters. But yeah, as the narrative progresses, it keeps doing this thing where it, as mentioned, it juxtaposes between, you know, what's happening presently and what's happened to Ishiro Takeda, like his memories and whatnot. And I love the little aesthetic choice they used and how they convince us of the fact that they're this kind of becoming the same person. You know, she has sympathy for what he went through. He kind of respects what she is because she's not a monster or anything. But yeah, like images like this where you can kind of see both of their faces and it has this like digital overlay. I absolutely love it. And not to mention, it is kind of a heartbreaking story on this side of the page nonetheless. But once again, it does create the stakes. It does create the tension, as you would expect. One thing I definitely loved about this book, though, is its ending, because it kind of leaves it somewhat open-ended. You don't necessarily need a sequel, but I wouldn't mind if they kept going with this, because honestly, this was a hell of an endeavor. As you can see, such interesting work that you don't typically see. This is true graphic design, I would say. So yeah, if I had to term it as anything, it's a graphic novel series or novella series, because honestly, it really was striking to look at. It is a special book, believe me. And Dave Stewart being on the colors, as mentioned, like you're seeing some awesome dynamic color use as well. Like this book has no right being as good as it is. Let's just put it that way. But you know what? I guess we shouldn't be surprised with Ram V, because honestly, anytime he writes a narrative, he doesn't write a cookie cutter story. He will take an idea and expand upon it. He did that with Batman. He did that with Lila Starr. He's doing it here. He did it with Aquaman. So what can I say? I've become a huge fan of Ram V. But hey, it's no longer about me at this point. In all honesty, this is a really striking story. I've seen it go on sale too, so it's even cheaper than what I got it for. I highly recommend at least giving this a read at the very least, because you won't be disappointed. It's far more engaging than you probably expected it to be. So yeah, this is definitely on my thumbs up list if I had one. But there you go. But nonetheless, as mentioned, it's not about me at this point. Maybe you've read the story, maybe you have your own commentary on it, which I wouldn't mind reading, as always, in the comments down below. Y'all folks take care and enjoy the rest of your day.